Have you ever felt that the more you try to control everything, the more things slip out of your control? Michel de Montaigne, one of the greatest thinkers in history, gives us a powerful lesson. When you stop forcing life, everything begins to change. But what does that really mean? And how can you apply it to your life? Today, we're going to explore the wisdom behind this idea and understand why sometimes letting go is stronger than holding on. Part 1. The Power of Surrender. Michel de Montaigne, one of the great philosophers of the Renaissance, is known for his practical wisdom and his profound and honest reflections on human nature. His writings were not intended to teach rigid rules or offer ready-made formulas for success, but rather to understand oneself, and consequently, to help others do the same. One of his most powerful ideas is this: when you stop forcing life, everything begins to change. This phrase, though simple at first glance, carries a sea of meaning. In a world that teaches us from an early age to run, compete, plan everything, and control every aspect of our existence, Montaigne proposes the opposite: acceptance of uncertainty, embracing imperfection, and the art of letting life flow more lightly. He understood that life is not a mathematical equation where everything fits together exactly. It is more like a river that changes course, adapts to obstacles, and continues to flow, even when you try to dam it up. Forcing life is like rowing against the current. It takes enormous effort and most of the time gets you nowhere. Worse still, it drains your energy, destroys your peace, and makes you believe that everything is against you. But when you let go of the oars, when you accept that not everything is under your control, something curious happens. Life begins to cooperate. The unexpected becomes an opportunity. What seemed like a mistake turns out to be a necessary detour. And what once caused suffering now becomes learning. Montaigne teaches us that surrender is not passivity but wisdom. It is recognizing what is beyond our influence and focusing on what we can really change: our attitudes, our reactions, our decisions in the face of events. This attitude of surrender is not giving up, but presence. It is being fully present, in the now, without struggling with what has already happened or worrying about what has not yet happened. It is what the Stoics also called living in accordance with nature, acting reasonably, but accepting with serenity that which is beyond reason. Montaigne wrote his essays in search of himself, recognizing that human beings are contradictory, changeable, and limited. He believed that forcing answers, behaviors, or destinies only increased suffering. When people learn to observe themselves, with humility they find peace even in chaos. Therefore, stopping forcing life is an act of courage. It is making room for the new to enter, allowing life to reveal paths that control would never show. It is ultimately trusting, not in formulas, but in the process. And when that trust is born, everything changes, not because the world has changed, but because you have stopped fighting it, and you have started walking with it. Part 2. The 3 signs that you are forcing life too much. It is easy not to realize that we are forcing life. It happens silently, disguised as willpower, persistence, or focus. But there is a fine line between healthy determination and an unhealthy attachment to control. Often, the suffering we feel does not come from circumstances themselves, but from our resistance to them. Montaigne and the Stoics warned, the more we try to impose our will on the world, the more frustration and imbalance we create. And there are very clear signs that we are pushing too hard. The first is an obsession with immediate answers. When you can't tolerate time, when everything has to happen now, exactly as you planned, anxiety sets in. This desire for immediate control reveals a mind that doesn't trust the journey itself. Life has its own rhythms, and there are processes that cannot be accelerated without losing their essence. A flower that is forced to bloom before its time will die. The same is true of projects, relationships, and decisions. The second sign is the demand for perfection. You demand too much of yourself, believing that everything must turn out exactly as you imagined, without mistakes, without flaws, without delays. And when something goes off script, you feel like a failure. This is a clear sign of internal rigidity. Those who seek perfection at any cost are forcing life to be what it is not. They are demanding that it bend to their will, when the natural thing would be to adapt to what it offers. Perfectionism is, in fact, a form of fear of making mistakes, of being judged, of losing control. But what is alive, true, and human will never be perfect. It will be imperfect, yes, but full of meaning. The third sign is the rejection of unexpected changes. When something goes off plan, you despair, go into denial, or try to correct the course by force. But life never completely obeys our plans. It is made up of twists and turns, surprises that at first seem unfair or wrong. However, over time we realize that many of these detours were precisely the most important paths. Those who force life reject these changes, and in doing so, also reject their own growth. Montaigne said that human beings are eternal learners of themselves, and no one truly learns unless they are willing to let go of fixed ideas, rigid identities, and plans that no longer make sense. The wisest are not those who never change, but those who change with ease, attention, and courage. Pay attention. These signs are not just passing discomforts. They are profound warnings that you are going against the flow of existence. And every time we force life, it responds with tension, whether in the body, emotions, or relationships. True strength lies in knowing when to insist and when to let go, when to resist and when to accept, when to act and when to simply allow. Because deep down, forcing life too much is trying to be what we are not, gods of destiny. And we are not. We are apprentices, navigators, travelers. And the more we recognize this, the lighter everything becomes. Part 3. What happens when you let go of control? Letting go of control is not giving up on life. It is stopping suffocating it with impossible demands. When you stop pushing, something magical begins to happen. You start listening more and reacting less. The inner silence increases. Decisions are no longer driven by desperation, but guided by clarity. Letting go of control is like taking off your headphones in an environment full of natural sounds. Suddenly you notice details, subtleties, signs that were there all along but were masked by anxiety. You become more sensitive to the present, more available to what is in front of you. And it is in this state of presence that true wisdom flourishes. Life then ceases to be a series of battles and begins to resemble more of a dance, where you alternate between leading and being led. And that transforms everything. When you stop forcing life, you create space for spontaneity, not blind impulsiveness, but a genuine freedom to be who you are, without having to prove anything to anyone. The best ideas, the most meaningful encounters, the surest paths, they all usually come when you are relaxed, attentive, and not desperately trying to control the outcome. It is in this state of letting go that creativity awakens. You see solutions where you once saw only problems. You see beauty where you once saw only chaos. And most importantly, you begin to realize that many of the tragedies that control tried to prevent would never actually happen. They were just ghosts created by a panicked mind. The Stoics called this conformity with nature, living in harmony with what is, not with what we would like it to be. It is acting responsibly on what depends on us and accepting with serenity what is beyond our reach. This is true freedom, knowing where your influence ends and where life with its own designs begins. Montaigne, reflecting on his own existence, understood that forcing events was a form of violence against oneself. He realized that peace does not lie in getting everything you want, but in stopping demanding so much from reality. When you let go of control, you also become kinder to yourself. You realize that you don't have to have all the answers right now, that you don't have to be strong all the time, that it's okay to feel fear, doubt, or even get lost sometimes, because that's how life is, imperfect, unstable, surprising, and that is precisely where its beauty lies. Forcing control is trying to freeze what is always changing. Letting go is trusting the movement. You begin to realize that when you stop pushing everything into your own time, life finds its own rhythm. and that rhythm is almost always wiser than ours. Life has a right time to blossom, to break through, to reveal itself. And when you stop forcing it, you begin to see these revelations more clearly. Closed doors no longer cause panic. Delays no longer feel like punishment. And detours, once so feared, now appear as part of the journey. In the end, letting go is, above all, an act of trust. Not blind, but conscious. Trusting that you will know how to deal with whatever comes your way. Trusting that life is not against you. It just has bigger plans than yours. And when you finally understand that, everything starts to change. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. Part 4. How to live without forcing. Letting go of control is not something that happens overnight. It is a constant practice, almost a re-education of the gaze. Montaigne understood this deeply. In his writings, he showed how by observing himself with brutal honesty, he learned to free himself from the traps of vanity, pride, and obsession with certainties. Living without forcing requires humility. The humility to accept that we don't know everything, that we don't master everything, and that even so we are exactly where we should be. This attitude begins with something simple but powerful, the habit of self-observation. Not to judge yourself, but to get to know yourself. Montaigne wrote as if he were talking to his own soul. He asked himself why he was angry, why he wanted certain things, why he avoided others. He knew that by naming his emotions they lost their power. And that, in itself, is a way of letting go of control. The Stoics, in turn, developed very practical and accessible practices to cultivate this inner state of lightness and surrender. The first of these is the exercise of the dichotomy of control. In any situation, they ask themselves, does this depend on me or not? If it did, they acted with courage. If it didn't, they accepted it with serenity. This little filter is revolutionary. It prevents us from wasting energy trying to change what is beyond our reach. It protects us from despair and chronic frustration. And most interestingly, by focusing only on what is within our control, we become more effective, calmer, and more confident. It's a paradox. The less you try to control everything, the more control you gain over yourself. Another fundamental practice is amor fati, love of fate. This is not passive resignation, but active acceptance. It is looking at the facts of life, even the difficult ones, and saying, so be it. May this also teach me something. When you practice love fati, you stop resisting what has already happened, and in doing so you release an immense amount of energy that was previously used to dwell, complain, or rebel, energy that can now be used to create, act, and evolve. And perhaps the most overlooked but equally essential practice is returning to the present moment. Forcing life usually happens because we are stuck in two places: the past we cannot change, or the future that has not yet arrived. But Montaigne reminded us, my life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened. The mind creates problems where often there is only uncertainty. Returning to the present is an antidote to this illusion. Breathing mindfully, walking with your feet on the ground, looking at the sky and realizing that it needs nothing to be beautiful. These small pauses have the power to reconnect us with reality, and to remind us that most of the pressure we doesn't feel was invented by ourselves. Living without forcing is living in a state of listening to the signals of the body, the intuitions of the soul, the rhythms of nature. It is understanding that everything has its time, the ripening of a fruit, the healing of a pain, the arrival of an answer. We are not here to control everything. We are here to live, and living fully requires trust. Trust in the process. Trust in our own ability to learn from everything. And above all, trust that life, when not forced, knows exactly what it is doing. Ultimately, what Michel de Montaigne discovered, and the Stoics had known for centuries, is something that seems simple, but changes everything. Life does not respond to your effort, it responds to your energy. The more tense, desperate, and obsessed with control you are, the more confusing and heavy it will seem. But when you let go, when you stop fighting the natural flow of things and start flowing, with it, something changes. It's not the world that changes first, it's you. And that changes everything. You realize that what seemed like urgency was often anxiety in disguise. What seemed like resistance was fear, and what seemed like control was actually deep insecurity. When you see yourself clearly, you realize that the struggle has always been internal. The peace you sought outside was inside all along, but you can only access it when you let go. Letting go is not synonymous with giving up. It is synonymous with trusting yourself, trusting life, trusting that you will know how to respond to whatever comes your way, even if you don't know how yet. Montaigne reminds us that wisdom is not about mastering life, but about accepting it with dignity. And that takes courage. Courage to stop running, courage to not know, courage to remain silent in the face of chaos, courage to wait without rushing, because those who can wait with peace in their hearts are already, inside, freer than most. And the Stoics give us a valuable gift, the reminder that everything we need is already here. It always has been. Serenity, strength, patience, clarity. All of this is born when you stop fighting against the present moment. When you say, yes, this is what I have right now, and with that, I will do my best. This true, unadulterated acceptance is the turning point. From it, a new life is born, lighter, more conscious, more connected to what really matters. The curious thing is that when you stop forcing things, what you've been looking for so hard often starts to come to you. The right people show up, the answers come, work flows, your health improves, your heart rests. This isn't magic, it's just a reflection of a new inner state. Life is a mirror, and when you change inside, the world reflects that back to you. So if you feel tired, exhausted from trying to control everything, from always getting it right, from proving your worth all the time, maybe it's time to try another path. A path with less tension and more confidence, less pressure and more presence, less fear and more surrender. Because, as Montaigne would say, tranquility is the greatest pleasure I know, and that tranquility is not in the future. It is now. It is in the exact moment when you decide to stop forcing and start trusting.